As this confidently strutting gentleman arrived, his gaze seemed to be glued only to her, with the moonlight streaming in through the window, illuminating the sisters' beds. The thoughts were shockingly clear in the silence of the night, even though freedom was imprisoned by their mother's outdated views on marriage. Elizabeth stubbornly clung to her yearning for pure emotion, often doubting whether she was destined for a life of solitude. Compared to her sisters, she was acutely aware that her looks weren't remarkable, though she rarely showed this self-doubt in public. Yet, it was her sensitivity in front of Darcy that became her Achilles, source of her heightened sensitivity, and the jabs in his words genuinely struck her most fragile spots, leaving Elizabeth with no choice but to armor herself with a sharper attitude. When the invitation to the Bingley Estates dinner arrived again, the air in the Bennet household buzzed with excitement. Although sent in the name of Miss Bingley, the underlying intentions were obvious. Their mother held the ornate invitation like it was her golden ticket to marital bliss. Dark clouds rolled in just in time, and a crafty glint flashed in Mrs. Bennet's eyes. She deliberately made her sister fall ill with a fever. As expected, she found her sister was unwell. Bingley had her settled in the guest room of the house, while the mother wore a smug grin, a look of "I've got this," all figured. Ignoring her daughter's pale face entirely, she only calculated how much time this illness would afford her to rub elbows with the wealthy elite. Facing such a situation, Elizabeth may have disagreed, but couldn't really fault her mother. After all, marriage was often treated like a business transaction. In this calculation, the invaluable feelings stashed away in Elizabeth's heart seemed to be reduced to nothing, however. She boldly set off down the serene path, trekking 3 miles to the Bingley estate, arriving in a dishevelled state just in time to bump into Bingley and Darcy having a chat. Her skirt was muttered, a stark contrast to the opulence of the hall. Ignoring the astonished looks around her, she hastily curtsied and made a beeline for the exit. Darcy's gaze kept trailing her retreating figure, even tuning out Bingley's playful jabs. As the gloom lifted, her sister's arrival alleviated her worries, and Bingley warmly insisted she stay to recuperate in peace. This care provided Elizabeth with some comfort regarding her sister's situation. During her stay, she noticed that Bingley had a crush on Darcy, as the wealthy lady was always eager to chat him up. Though topics were often dull, she never tired. Darcy maintained basic civility, struggled to hide his impatience. Yet whenever his gaze shifted to Elizabeth, he appeared notably softer, as a subtle undercurrent of feelings began to blossom. Quietly germinating within the heart of this proud gentleman, she desperately masked it with a stone-cold exterior, yet the other remained blissfully unaware, with Bingley then pulling Elizabeth away to chat under the— Well, she insisted on a walk with Elizabeth under the guise of exercise, reluctantly inviting Darcy along. But all she got in response was a frosty rejection, the air thick with the scent of old arrogance. Each word deepened Elizabeth's prejudice against her, while her exchanges with Darcy remained as sharp as ice. Yet Darcy's pauses were enough to reveal her true feelings. When it was time for farewell, Elizabeth was just about to hop onto the carriage. Suddenly unfamiliar sensations danced on her fingertips as the proud gentleman snatched his hand back with a swift turn. Elizabeth watched his lean back, utterly baffled by his mercurial temperament. Had it not been for her first impressions, she might have noticed this intimate brush, but alas, time was not on her side to ponder. For now, her family was busy arranging a marriage for her, and the man's name happened to be Collins. He was a distant cousin, and according to the farcical English inheritance laws, once Mr. Bennet kicked the bucket, his assets would go to this cousin. He could even legally eject the girls from their home. So, to protect their inheritance, they had no choice but to marry off this relative. Collins had his sights set on the but the eldest was already taken, so he settled for Elizabeth. Mrs. Bennet had long been disenchanted with her bookish second daughter. Naturally, she was thrilled about this match, but Elizabeth was blissfully unaware. One afternoon while out with his sisters, she crossed paths with the dashing young officer Wickham, who immediately took an interest in her, as her eager sisters enthusiastically made the introductions. Wickham gallantly offered to join them in picking out dresses, and his humble demeanour immediately charmed everyone. On the way home, they coincidentally ran into Bingley and Darcy trotting by on horseback. The moment they crossed paths, Darcy's expression darkened instantly. Wickham immediately withdrew his gentle smile, and in the suffocating silence, Darcy abruptly turned and left, leaving Elizabeth utterly bewildered. So, after Darcy left, she seized the moment to inquire about the story from Wickham, who openly confessed. His father had been the steward of the Darcy household, and old Mr. Darcy had favoured him greatly. Before passing, he even set him up with a clerical position, but after Darcy, out of jealousy, reneged on that promise, left him high and dry jobless. With hearsay alone, Elizabeth decided Darcy was not only arrogant but also a tyrant, thus intensifying her disdain for him. At the impending ball, Elizabeth put in great effort to dress up, hoping to progress her connection with Wickham. But amidst wandering through the festivities, she never saw the officer. She learned he hadn't come after asking. Disheartened, Cousin Collins insisted on dancing. She reluctantly followed. Every second felt like torture, but once the dance finally concluded, she managed to escape only to find Darcy waiting at the entrance. This proud man, usually so aloof, suddenly asked her to dance. Reacting instinctively, Elizabeth seized the moment to challenge him about his mistreatment of Wickham. Darcy bluntly accused Wickham of being two-faced, a pro at charming others with a false smile. In that moment, Elizabeth felt suffocated as his words struck uncomfortably close to home, so she retorted fiercely, aiming her verbal arrows right at Darcy. With string music wafting around them, the tension between them simmered, yet they were oddly aware of each other's every reaction, their dance as coordinated as seasoned. The silence was more suffocating than any argument. As the last note faded, Elizabeth hastily exited, with the shadows of Pride and Prejudice lingering thickly between them. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more delightful surprises.